Brr, cold out there. Hey everyone. Well, today I'm here to talk about my favorite piece of equipment in the shop, my 24-inch bandsaw. And I'm going to show you today how I set up to cut veneer. I'm going to go over a couple of different things. I'm going to go over how I set the tension on the blade, how I set the guides, how I account for the drift angle at which the blade wants to cut. Each blade has its own path that it wants to cut a straight line on. And so I'll show you how I adjust my fence to accommodate that. And I'm also going to show you how I set the fence so that I get consistent thickness across the width of each piece of veneer. I'm going to talk a little bit about the blades that I use. Since I do so much resawing, I've got a more or less dedicated resaw blade on here, which is a Lennox Woodmaster CT. The CT is for that it's carbide tipped, so it has actually carbide teeth brazed on to the flexible steel backing. These blades are phenomenal. They just will cut veneer all day long in everything but the most difficult woods. But I've put these blades through the tests, and I get about a year's worth of use of resawing on one of these blades. So I'm real happy with them. Some smaller saws can't accommodate a 1-inch wide blade, but there are lots of other blade choices out there, but I'm just going to tell you what's worked well for me over the last 10 years or so, at least as far as using this blade. So I'm going to move the camera so that I can get a better angle to show you my setups. All right, stay tuned. The first thing I do is back the guides off, the upper guides and the lower guides. So I've got the lower guides already backed off, and with my upper guides I can just slide those in and out and just slide it out of the way. So I don't want the guides to be interfering with the blade at all. And then I'll take out the throat plate and just press and get it set. I mean, my gauge is no different than a lot of bandsaw tension gauges, which is to say that it's not worth a whole lot to me in terms of having that. I mean, it's graduated by the the width of the blade, and so anyway, a lot of people know this, where the deflection of the blade, so you'd be pushing on one side to the point at which it stiffens up and won't allow you to push it further, and that should be about 1/4 of an inch. Another thing I do to check the tension is I'm going to start up the saw, and I'm going to increase and decrease the tension until I see that the blade is running without any fluttering. So I'm looking at the blade straight on, and I'm going to increase the tension. Now I know with these carbide tip blades, they tend to need a lot more tension. Even if you were to compare it to another 1-inch blade, regular carbon steel blade, these just require more tension. So I'm looking at the blade to see if it's fluttering at all as I increase the tension. It's looking pretty good, and then I'm going to back the tension off a little bit. Whoop, and there it starts to flutter again, so that I'll increase the tension. And let it settle down a little, and that looks good. I'm gonna live with that. So then I'm gonna bring the guides back in. Now I can't speak to every guide setup. These are Carter, roller bearing guides, and they work real well for resawing. And there's just a set screw for each set of wheels. And Carter makes these. You can get a single wheel, or these are doubled up for a wider blade. And I want to just set these just around where the gullet of the blade is, and I'm bringing the bearing so that it's almost touching. I can't really give you a number. You just want it close without touching. And I can just tap on the blade and even just turn these wheels to see if there's any resistance. Then the rear bearing, the thrust bearing, should be back far enough so that you can, when you push on the blade, you have about a 32nd or a 16th of an inch before it meets that thrust bearing. I should add that I needed to make sure that I set these guides so that they're above my resaw fence, which is a little taller than my regular fence, because on this column that the guides ride on up and down is not perfectly in tune. So I need to make sure that I'm adjusting the guides where they will be cutting. I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit. All right. Those look good. All right. Now I'm going to show you how I set the drift. I've got just a piece of poplar, and I'm going to strike a line parallel to one edge. Now, my fence slides on a rail here, and the rail is attached with 2 bolts to the underside of the table. I can loosen one of those bolts and be able to pivot the fence. Oh, here, I'll just. And by pivoting the fence, I can adjust the angle at which it cuts relative to the blade. So I'm going to have a bevel gauge ready, because I'm going to cut along this line freehand, let the saw take it as it wants to in terms of cutting out along a straight line, and once I get in 10 or 12 inches, I'm going to hold the piece down and then set my bevel gauge to the angle relative to the front edge of the table. So let's turn this on and do that. All right, now I've recorded the angle at which it was wanting to cut along a straight line, and loosen the fence. And lock the fence on the adjustment bar, and Oh, just even playing around with it, I'm pretty dang close. So that's where it wants to be. And I have found with these carbide tip blades that they tend to cut relatively square to the front edge of the table. Next, I'm going to show you how I check for parallel. I'm going to bring the fence close to the blade, approximately where the thickness I would want my veneer slices to be, which is, you know, a heavy 1/16 of an inch. And what I'm going to do is just take a piece of wood, and I'm going to turn this on and make a little kerf. Make a little kerf there, and then I'm going to check that kerf at the top of the blade. Putting a block here for safety, so that when I go to feed the piece into the blade up here, it's supported. So let's do that and see what kind of parallel we have. Okay, so that's showing that it's cutting more off of the outside of the blade. So that means I'm going to now tilt the table, and I'm going to tilt it so that the fence comes a little bit closer to the blade. And that's just, with my saw, it's just a bolt that raises and lowers the table. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I don't really care if the fence is square to the table, because I'm not cutting relative to the table. I'm cutting relative to the fence. So if I know that the blade is the same distance from the fence, from bottom to top, then that's going to give me a consistent thickness of veneer. All right, so that's how I've got all my basic setups there, and I'm going to show you how I actually cut a couple of slices of veneer, and I've got an idea based on this piece, approximately what thickness of veneer I'm cutting, which is a heavy 1/16. I'm going to show you how, like, my feed rate, so you can see this particular blade is 1.3 tooth per inch. The Woodmaster CT, they make also in a 2 tooth per inch. And they work equally well, I would say. I just get a little bit faster feed rate with the fewer teeth. And I also just wanted to say, with the Lennox blades, I get them through a supplier called Spectrum Supply. You can look online for them. They sell the whole range of Lennox blades. And their prices are really good, and can, you know, make up blades to whatever length you want. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm also going to turn the dust collector on, because my bandsaw makes a fair amount of dust. there you have it. This looks not bad. Looks a little heavy, and if I, these are going to get run through my thickness sander and run them down to right around a 16th, or usually even a little bit less than that. So if I start out a heavy 16th, then that's a good place to be, because I try to not go back to the joiner and rejoin each face in between cuts. I find that if it's cutting well, then I can take 2 or 3 or more in some cases cuts before I go back to the joiner to freshen up the face. So that's it. That's the whole shebang. And I hope, as I'm going to tell you over and over, I can only show you what works for me. And I know that there's a lot of other ways to set up your bandsaw, but this is good practice that I learned from the start, from some people who have great skills with the bandsaw, Jim Krenoff being one of them in his lifetime, one of the kings of resawing veneer. So anyway, that's the story. Morning glory. Okay, have a good day.